really that might help us through. It is designed to be quite informal, this, so we've purposefully gone for a different angle rather than the sort of standard, maybe typical webinar series that you might find. Those that have been on, and I think majority have, you'll understand what I'm meaning with that. But those that haven't, it's quite informal, and you'll see as we move through this evening. Certainly for the next sort of hour and a half, potentially longer, depending on what the engagement's like. Laptop or tablet. So if you haven't been on, is preferred. If you're on a phone, you might have to toggle between the two screens. So if you're working off a smartphone listening, if you click on your screen, it should jump between the two. Or it certainly does on Apple anyways. I can't comment on Android because I try and stay away from the Android world. But it certainly does on Apple. Mute yourself. So just use the microphone to mute yourself. If you think your internet's a bit slow, and you've got your camera on, just turn it off and it'll probably help you. What we'll try and do, and particularly this evening, this is going to be a lot about, this is going to be a lot about yourselves and trying to get some real clarity around what's going on and how do we support moving forward. Unmute whenever you want, like I say, it's relaxed, so unmute whenever you want, and we will try and answer anything as best we can. Text, WhatsApp, call Ben. So Ben is our tech support again. If you need any help or anything during, I know a couple of people have used it, drop him a line, and he'll get and support you as quickly as we can. Okie doke. So that's probably pretty much the housekeeping. Okay. I sent out something today. So me and Jack were having a chat about this prior. And I sent something out just to start to plant some seeds and consider where we're at. So before sort of I introduce Jack, I just want to draw you sort of thinking towards our area for this evening. And it's probably an area which, I'll be honest, everybody comes into some contact with and has some success and some issues as we move through it. So if you could begin just in the chat function, and I kind of dropped this seed earlier on this morning. Just drop any current issues that you might face with your players just in the chat function. It'll really help this evening. Now, all I'll say, and it's is Mr. Houston on the call. If you're not, pal, don't panic. All it is could you try and keep personnel sort of names, examples just as general as you can. So I'll give you some examples there, particularly when we're talking about this, because we'll record it and we will post it. Player A, as an example, player X, pseudonym, or it could even be your own name. So I might say James, example. That's probably as much to help me, by the way, and Helen in terms of editing. So I don't want to try and, where we can, we want to try and keep it flowing as much as we can. So there's just some things to get us started and consider. So like I said, if you could drop some stuff in the chat function, that would be great to get us kicked off, really. And I am now going to hand sort of over to Jack. Jack is well, I'll tell you what, I'll hand over to Jack and Jack can introduce himself.
Thanks a lot for that, James. Thanks everyone for logging on, and good to virtually meet you all. I guess there's a few caveats which I'll get to in a second, but yeah, basically in a nutshell, I manage the Northwest coach development team for the FA in terms of grassroots coach development. So what does that mean? Basically, everyone outside of the professional game, me and our team are responsible for, I guess, the formal, non-formal and informal development of coaches across the Northwest. So that stretches from the northern tip of Cumberland for us right down to the southern tip of Shropshire. So that's our region, I guess. So I don't know if that's enough for you there, James.
That's fine, mate. That's fine.
Yeah.
So and it's probably Jack's worked within our county for a number of years prior to his current role. Right, saying that, Jack, aren't I?
Yeah.
So some of you might have come across Jack before. If you've been fortunate enough to be in his workshops, you'll understand why we were keen to try and get him on, certainly with ourselves this evening. Cheers, Huey. Said you won't stress like last time. It's more, mate, just to keep going in terms of the names and things like that. So yeah, I suppose the format then for this evening, it's quite relaxed. I've got some content that we've got that we can put together, but ultimately we want to try and keep it quite conversational, really. So I don't know, Jack, if you can see the chat function now, but there's some stuff coming in. So
Yep.
As I don't know how you want to play, Jack. Do you want to just go straight in and then we'll get some content done as we go?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
So there's a few caveats that I failed to mention. So for me, unfortunately, I can talk. I am very aware of that. So if I do go on, don't be afraid to interrupt. I don't take it personally, but I do have an odd rant now and then. I've got a hard out at 9 p.m. I've always wanted to say that, a hard out. It's like one of those proper office terms, isn't it? But my hard out is 9 o'clock. So we've got a Zoom quiz with the it started out as a lads quiz. It's turned into a bit of a couples quiz on a Thursday night now. We're doing it last week. We started doing it for charity. So we raised, I think, a couple of £100 for some local food banks around here. So if you're feeling generous tonight, you're more than welcome to donate to your local food bank. I would encourage you. More caveats. I know this is a coffee club. If you're drinking coffee at this time of night, you're a stronger person than me, because I would be still awake at 6 o'clock in the morning. So fair play to you. Another one. I am not an expert. Let me just make that abundantly clear. I'm not an expert in this. There are plenty of others who've devoted their whole lives, professors of sociology and psychology. When we start getting into the weeds a little bit tonight, I think what myself and other coach developers around the region and the country, we've got to be kind of quite broad generalists and bring things together and have a good enough grasp and understanding of a number of different disciplines, because being a coach, as you all know, you've got to be a part psychologist, part sociologist, part physiologist, part technician, tactician, and a human being at the end of the day as well. So I'm not an expert, because nowadays, and I think that this is something I would urge everyone on the teams tonight to do, is get used to saying these three words: I don't know. It's a very powerful statement. It's probably been seen as a weakness in the past, but Chris Whitty is an expert. The chief medical officer is an expert. I'm not. So just make that clear. Get used to saying I don't know, in a time that we've got to pay attention to experts more than ever now in this day and age. Tonight, I'm going to say some things that will fly in the face of conventional wisdom. They will be controversial to some, and to some of you, some things that I'm going to say is going to make you feel very uncomfortable, because it will pick holes and it will pick at stuff that you probably do and that we've always done, and we've never really questioned it. We've just taken it for granted. Okay. I'm not perfect, very, very much far from it, as James and Dave will tell you. I lost my rag once this season with the lads that I coach. Happy to talk about that openly as we go through the evening. In fact, I lost my rag today because the Wi-Fi went down. Trying less and less to do that, but I'm far from perfect. I'm also not a parent, so take that as you will. I'm very fortunate that the best hour and a half of my week before the lockdown was the Wednesday night that I spent with the under-16s that I coach. Really, really enjoy the company that they have, and I'll use loads of anecdotes of my time with them over the last sort of 6 years or so. But I'm lucky that I'm a parent in some way to 18, 16-year-olds every Wednesday night, but then I get to give them back. So those of you that do it full time, I take my hat off you too, because I'm not sure I could do it. And lastly, I think another plea I would make before we get cracking is, for me, I would urge the importance to you to go away and reflect on your own coaching after this, and subsequent Thursday night clubs that you're doing with Cumberland FA. There's probably never been a better time to actually reflect on your own coaching. None of us can get out there and practically do it and now's the time to do all those things that we've been putting off. And you've probably been naturally reflecting on your own coaching anyway, because you've had the gift of time that we've been given at the moment. So do go away and reflect after this, and do discuss with other coaches, with other people, some of what we talk about tonight. You might even start to think about the way that you parent, if you're a parent. But do question yourself and get comfortable with questioning why you do what you do. You logged onto this because you've got an interest in this topic and you feel it's something that you might need help with. So go away. Don't just let tonight finish when we log off. Go away and do some further research and reading. Otherwise, it'll just be something that it's called in academia as edutainment. So it's just education for entertainment's sake. So don't leave what we do tonight at 8:55, 9 p.m. Do go away and do keep the conversation going. Is that okay, James?
Good. Yeah, good stuff, mate. And I think, to be fair, from looking at some of the questions that are coming in, we've got a good starting point, really. And Jim Fallon, if you're there, mate, do you want to? Because I think it's a really good starting point and something that'll get us kicked off. Do you want to unmute yourself, mate, and just give a bit more context to the question that you mean? And it, by the way, it's definitely not being pedantic. I think it's a really good point.
Okay. Cheers, mate. Yeah. I just think, and I don't like to say sometimes, I don't know if it's just in my own mind, but straight away when people start talking about managing behaviour, I almost link back with perceive people trying to control what the children might be doing, and it's just over years. Like you said, you make loads of mistakes, don't you? But the last few years between 5 to 15-year-olds, I think sometimes you just have to roll with it, and maybe don't take it personal. I suppose if kids are playing up and all that sort of stuff, it's So I just wonder, rather than describing it as managing behaviour, for me it's more like you're trying to shape the behaviour so that they're focusing on the football or the activity, whatever they're doing, as opposed to you trying to manage it.
Jim, I'm starting to wonder whether you're a plant here, because if I've got my notes out in front of me, and I'll be totally honest with you, when the England DNA came out, I think it was 2014. It was when we were doing at the time a big conference at St George's Park to launch it and what have you, and I got the unenviable task of being asked to deliver a practical workshop on this topic. And the context was, it was a Saturday afternoon. It was about 4 o'clock. It's the graveyard shift in the dome at St George's. So I don't know if you've been in there, but it was late December, freezing cold. And I was to do a practical session in front of about 300 coaches with the under sevens that I coached at the time in my grassroots club. Now, they'd already played that morning. It was windy, which has an effect on behaviour, I'm convinced. They've then been driven down to St George's, and I found out that on the way down, the parents had loaded them up full of McDonald's and sugar and Coke, and then they come bursting into this arena. One of the kids actually got in the shower and turned it on before he came out and soaked his mum as well. So they come running into the dome at St George's, and suddenly I've got to control or manage these kids. And the session actually went okay. One of the lads decided to have a little nap in the middle of the session and decided to see how long it would be before I would come over and see how he was and test my patience. But for some reason, I kind of got the label of the behaviour guy after that within our team. So it's been a while since I've talked about this stuff and delivered this stuff. So I have made some notes tonight, and the first bullet point I've made was, I actually don't like the term managing behaviour. I wish I could show you the screen here. I prefer developing behaviour, and I actually look back at some of the stuff that I was doing in that workshop, where maybe nearly 6 years ago now, 5.5 years ago, and I cringe at some of it. Some of it's useful, but some of it is cringeworthy. And I will probably look back in 5 or 6 years ago, if I listen to this again tonight, and cringe at some of the content that we've been talking about tonight, because that's the way that knowledge moves on. And if we're not moving forward, then we're stood still. So I 100% agree with you. I'm not a big fan of the term managing or controlling, especially when it comes to behaviour. I think what was the phrase that you used, Jim? Was it shaping?
Sorry, I said shaping. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Fully agree with you. Yeah, and I think that's what, you know, we've got a big responsibility as coaches to do, is to help to shape the behaviour, because there is one thing. Well, you can't control the kids, but you can control your own behaviour. You can influence the kids, definitely, and you can influence their behaviour, but you can't control them. And especially, you know, we're outnumbered, if I'm honest. We tend to be kind of 16-1 in their favour. So if we do start trying to be controlling and managing, I think there's only going to be one winner if we turn it into a contest.
That's great. Cheers, Jack.
Okay.
Just bring Alan Evans in. Alan, you've just made a comment underneath, and I think you're just kind of echoing what Jack said there, have you, around you see it more as influencing. I don't know if you want to expand on that, Al, a little bit with Jack.
Yeah, probably just from my time working in schools, and probably have sent numerous kids into isolation and units. And from my opinion, I just don't think that works, because they kind of quite often end up back in there again. And it's more about trying to get them to think about how they behave and the consequences of it. Because I certainly don't think we can control it from when I've worked in schools. Like I say, I just think a lot of them just end up back in their units, and it's kind of understanding maybe why they're behaving like that, if that makes sense. Yeah,
100%. I think I remember one of the first jobs I ever had was in that high school that I used to go to as a student, and I didn't have a teaching degree or qualification, but I ended up covering maybe 4 lessons a day because the school was short-staffed. And what I noticed was it was interesting going around and seeing different lessons and the way that different teachers dealt with this sort of stuff. And for some, it was kind of like 3 strikes and you're out. And I've spoken to coaches on coaching courses who are also teachers who work within schools who adopt this framework, and that got me kind of questioning, well, why would you do that? Because what you want the students or the players, if you like, to learn. You know, surely that's one of the reasons why you're there and they're there, is to help them. And if we're really lucky, we've got a real free pass as football coaches, because our content, our curriculum, if you like, should be inherently motivating. So the kids are there generally because they want to be there and because they love the game of football. So we are really pushing against an open goal when it comes to this stuff. It's not like I'm teaching chemistry or biology or history, and I've got to kind of take some content that might be quite dry and try and jazz it up. You know, we're trying to teach these children football and life skills through football. I think we should recognise that fact. You know, when it comes to how we deal with these kids. You mentioned the word influence. I fully agree. The first person I would encourage you guys to go down the rabbit hole on, after we finish tonight, is a guy called Professor Robert Cialdini. He wrote a seminal piece of work called Influence, which is broken down into kind of six key principles. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because it comes to shaping behavior and dealing with, I guess, potentially inappropriate behaviors or reinforcing good behaviors, you can't, I've already mentioned, you can't control the kids. The only person that you can control is yourself, but you can influence. The thing that you need to be able to influence somebody else, though, is a relationship, is that trust. And so I would urge you to think about the relationships that you've got with your own players. What sort of state, what sort of health are those relationships in? And how can you improve those relationships and those connections between you and the players? Because I promise you that the stronger the relationships that you've got with your players, the less managing, if you like, of inappropriate behaviours you'll have to deal with. And I can give you some concrete examples of that in practice, if you like.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. And David, I think I'm not sure your surname, mate, so I think it's just David under Alan's comments. Is that kind of what you were meaning with around you wouldn't associate managing with controlling and more shaping?
Yeah, basically, yeah. There are lots of other words. Yeah, control wouldn't be one of them. Yeah, so like as I said, shaping, influencing, making connections, relationships, being consistent, creating the right environment, all those sorts of things that really think of management as controlling. Yeah,
good stuff. I suppose I posed the question just on here, Jack. So why is building them positive relationships so important when you're looking at particularly around the behaviour?
Yeah. Okay. So a good example I was thinking of earlier actually is the lads I coach are under 16s, and many of them I've known since they were say 9 or 10. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, a good friend of mine at our club, he's also a coach mentor with the FA, and I think he might well have been at the time. He was taking our under 16s at that time. I think the lads I coached were 12s at that point, so it would have been about 4 years ago. And he said, "I can't make the session. Any chance you can cover it?" And I swanned in, sort of bold as brass. "Not a problem. I've got it. It'll be fine. It'll be a piece of cake." I had about, I know how many I played. I had 16 players on a half of a third, which is not a lot of space, granted. But I thought, I work for the FA. I'm a regional coach development manager. How hard can this be? Surely they'll come along for the ride. It'll be fine. An hour later, I'd looked like I'd been dragged through a hedge backwards. It was a complete disaster. The session was a mess. They ran me ragged, and it's only since I've reflected on it that it was completely obvious why they ran me ragged, because I'm this kind of supply teacher that's come in, got no prior relationship with any of the players. I don't know any of them. So how on earth am I going to be able to influence them to behave in pro-socially, if you like, if I don't have that prior relationship? And then I look back, I think about the 16s that I coach now, and it's genuinely a joy. And I really don't have any behavioural issues to deal with, because all the work has been done in, I guess, what we'd call under the surface, in preventing rather than having to cure. And we can get into the weeds, if you like, James, about how we might prevent inappropriate behaviour rather than having to fix it when it does go wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Just looking. So I'm just looking through some of the stuff that's come in already. In particular, so where am I at? Just scroll back up. If we start then, Jack, at that sort of starting point, and Craig, I don't know if you want to mute yourselves, mate, because if we start looking at sort of that, well, the work that's been done prior, what does that look like? And I suppose people that are certainly working in the foundation phase now, you might, and you probably will every session, come up with some challenges. Craig, Bristow, do you want to unmute yourself, mate, and just go through what you've meant in the chat box?
Yeah, no problem, pal. It's just on one or two of the sessions, you kind of come across, especially being at that young age, you can tell when the kids have had sort of a giddy afternoon towards the end of term and things like that. They bring that into the session. They tend to at the minute fork off into all the little school cliques, so to speak, when you're trying to explain the session and things like that. It's just managing that. Jack, would you look at sort of splitting them groups up, or would you just manage that group a little bit more intensely during the session yourself?
Yeah, I think that is a classic "it depends" answer, isn't it? And we can discuss both ends of the spectrum, can't we? I guess one of the things that we've got to remember and recognise is that one of the key drivers for why children, especially young children, play football is to be with friends. That being said, a lot of them are driven to go to football to make new friends as well. So it's a difficult one to try and break friendship groups up so formally within a football setting. But I would encourage, where possible, you to really think critically about who am I grouping with who. Autonomy and choice is fantastic, but when cliques start forming, then we're going to have problems. One thing that I found particularly useful in my own coaching, which again, it's just a little tip, if you like. It worked for me. It might not work with a copy and paste for you, but whenever I had issues with groupings, with younger players especially, what I used to do, and it started out as a way of saving time, and I realized that there was an unintended consequence, that it kind of nipped in the bud any complaints that might arise about who's on whose team. So you'll have heard of the phrase arrival activity, most of you. So it's another way of saying, let's just get things off to a good start. Often an activity that is not really dependent on numbers. So players, as they arrive, can join in with the game or the practice, whatever it is. And it can be regulated by the players themselves. So the coach can be setting up, minimizing that downtime while the players are on task with something. So if you're looking at principles of arrival activities, two things: players can regulate themselves, not necessarily dependent on numbers. And what I used to do was set the area up while the kids were engaged in something that they were playing, and I would go around and give the bibs out. So for however many teams were in the next practice that we were going to move on to, but I knew who I wanted with who, or let's say who I didn't want with who, and I could bib up from there. And because the kids were so engrossed in the arrival activity that they were doing at that time, when we called them in to kind of explain the next practice, it was like, oh, I've got a blue on, okay. And for some reason, it seemed to nip it in the bud. I want to be on so-and-so's team. The opposite was bringing everybody in and going, right, Jay, you're going to go on that team. Ben, you'll go on this team. And then suddenly you've got this kind of build-up of pressure that, oh, no, I want to go on so-and-so's team. And I found that this kind of just prevented all that, whilst also being a lot more effective with time. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
No, brilliant. Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think as well, something, Craig, just on that around the kids is I know we use competition a lot. So when you challenge them with numbers, so it's quite on the spot, but getting the groups of 4 and it's quite quick and sharp, and pretty much the kids' natural reaction is to win to get there quick. Rather than where's my mate? Can we get together in that group? So again, I think little things certainly like that where you catch the kids out but in. If that makes sense, that probably helps with your numbers.
And another thing that I found is just be open and honest and transparent, and have a conversation with the players about this. This is why your group, I'm grouping you with you. This is why you're with so and so. This is why you're not with so and so, and this is what I want you. This is how I think it will benefit you. It might not work straight away, but it will help to build that relationship between you and the player or players. That you're being open and honest, and you're explaining your decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I did pick 1 or 2 good points up. Currently going through my level 2, which unfortunately stopped due to the current circumstances. But I did pick 1 or 2 good points up on there. Little things I did implement before we finished. Simple little things like a behaviour board, yellow and red cards. I think that was one of your ideas, Ben, that was mentioned that I've pinched. But that did actually seem to work well as soon as that was mentioned. But it'll be interesting to see if it carries on when we get back and start up again.
Just good stuff, Craig. And I suppose one thing that's just come in the chat, David, again, and another great point, and I think it builds on what you're just saying there, David. Do you want to jump in with that? Because I think that builds on sort of a really good point there that they're making.
I haven't got too much to say. Just if your sessions are supposed to be developing the team and the individuals, then I'm only just started to do this. You shouldn't just be putting X's and O's or red circles and yellow circles or whatever, but actually thinking about who you put where and when and why, and that'll hopefully get better outcomes. And again, if you maybe talk to the players about that, and that might get them to understand why why you're not putting them with somebody else, with their friends, because maybe one's a striker and one's a defender, so they wouldn't necessarily be playing with each other on the pitch directly.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think it's something that we've probably neglected for some time when we talk about planning. And I think I don't profess to be a very technical or tactical coach. I love the game. I love to see the game played in an attractive, exciting way. But I'm quite comfortable in practice design because I'm one of the lucky ones that gets to see masses and masses of different practice and get loads of time on the pitch. And what I've found personally is that so for that reason, planning for me, I'm much more like a yachtsman who'll get in the boat and just react to what the weather's like that day, rather than sticking rigidly to X's and O's, got to make this move and so on. And by 15 minutes past, we've got to be doing this, this and this. I feel personally a lot more comfortable. So because of that, what I've done with my own planning now is plan for interactions that I want with certain individuals. So it might be that so-and-so's granddad has taken ill and I know about this. Okay, how do I, put some time aside at some point to make sure that, how is he? What's he feeling like, and how is that going to impact on his ability to be able to focus at training tonight? And what one really simple thing that I've built in, and the lads hopefully aren't listening to this, but if they do, they'll know why I do it now. There's a group that are on before us, and they play mini soccer. So every week we have to move the goals back. So I'll deliberately pick one or two to help me with the goalpost. And the reason why is if we move the goals, I've got that person's attention for a minute, 2 minutes, or whatever it is that we're moving the goals. He's at one end of the goal, I'm at the other. We're both facing the same direction, so it's not confrontational. And I've got a really good opportunity there to have a good two-way conversation with that player. So I think, any chance that you get to build in interactions into your planning, like you say, I forget what the previous gentleman's name was, but with a rationale. So actually thinking about, what's the journey that each of those individuals are on? Who might you not have spoken to for, a number of sessions or games? Because it does happen. Who do you need to put some time aside to have that little one-to-one? Because I think that it is those one-to-one moments that are absolutely crucial in terms of shaping behaviour and preventing the unwanted behaviour that that we're not there for. Yeah,
definitely. And I think Ben Qualtrough, all the way from the island, is on. Ben, do you want to unmute yourself, mate? Because I think we're still kind of on the relationship side of things. So do you want to just give Jack that killer question? I think you're trying to throw in at him.
Do me.
He's not.
No. I mean,
you there,
firstly,
it should be Ben delivering this, not me.
Definitely not, Jack. Definitely not. Firstly, apologies if you hear roar in the background. It's his bedtime, so he might be screaming or wailing at the moment. Just interested, Jack. You talked about that experience where you stepped in as the cover coach. What if you were to go back to that situation? You don't have the prior knowledge of the players. What would you do differently to build that relationship with them?
Well, I'd try and get them on board as quickly as possible. So I would show a bit of vulnerability, I think, because that is something that we don't really talk about, and we don't like to show weaknesses, do we, as a coach? So I would show a bit of vulnerability. I would try and get them on board as quick as possible, and try and give them some choice and autonomy, and go, what would be not just what do you want to do tonight, because I think we all know what answer we would get back, but actually maybe reframing the question. I'm thinking on my feet here, but what would be of most benefit to you tonight to learn before the next game? I'm sure we could improve, between me, you, and the rest of the people listening in. But I would start with maybe that question and go from there. I remember our colleague Pete Sturgis was telling us about a story where he was struggling with a group of under-14s once. He just couldn't get them to pay any attention to him, so he just asked one of them, right, who's the hardest kid here? Right. You come over here, and he basically got the stag of the group on side first, And then it was almost as if to say to the rest of the group, right, okay, if he can get his attention, then we'll come with the rest of you. So it's a bit tribal in some senses, but I would probably go back and chill out. Don't think it's got to be about me. It is only one session, and it is only 1 hour in their whole program. I am that supply teacher, so let's let our hair down and have a little bit of fun as well.
All right, Ben. I think there's a few coming in, Jack, and it's sort of on a trend really. And I think it's something certainly that you put out, and I know it was on the boot room, etc. This thing around catching people in as opposed to out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to explore a little bit more about that and your thoughts around what you mean by we catch people doing the good things, and sometimes it's come across as we ignore the other things, and this might be new for some people. This might be some things that people are already doing. So feel free, guys, to chip in with this and your experiences.
Yeah, and this is the bit where we get into the murky waters of me now starting to disagree with what I used to believe. So, do I still believe in ignoring the, I guess, low level stuff that is there's no could keep us awake all night? Yes, I do. I think that we've got to ask ourselves the question: why? For whose benefit is it that we're trying to get all these kids to sit down and be quiet or stand still and behave? And I think if we're honest, we would say it was for our benefit. So if we are going to bring them in and have them listen, or have them all listen to us as a group, what we say is better be pretty snappy, and it better be pretty good, because these kids nowadays, they've got plenty more exciting and engaging things that are grabbing their attention and time. So, and I think we've got to up our game with that and respect that. So, yes, the classic case is the 15 who are paying attention, and then the one that isn't, perhaps, or it doesn't look like he or she is paying attention. So that person might be turning around, looking at what's going on behind, and we focus on that one rather than the 15 who are, if you like, on task, whatever that may be. So. I've done this myself. You can't help but focus your attention and try and get that last cat herded in, can you? So I would urge coaches to relax a little bit and focus on those who are, if you like, on task. The catching and being good stuff. Where I am at the moment is, I still think praise is a really useful tool, but I'm currently kind of re-examining the evidence behind it and starting to question some praise. But where I am with praise at the moment, and its use in shaping behaviour, is bless me, be careful if it's public. And again, if you watch the videos back that are in the stuff that I think James is going to send out or sent out, I would use less public praise or less praise in front of a group, with the intention of shaping the group's behaviour. And the reason why I say that now is because think about the what that's doing socially to the group. So, and what it does to that individual's relationships with the rest of the group. So I'm not saying never use it, but I'm just saying just be careful. If that's the only way of shaping behaviour, that I would expect that to backfire quite quickly. But there is other ways that you can, I guess, catch them being good in, one-to-one individual conversations. And one of the things I've written down on the notes here is how many in your coaching, how many genuine two-way moments have you had in your hour or hour and a half, however long you get. And what I mean by that is more than kind of, if it's a game of tennis, the ball passes over the net more than twice. So how many of those moments do you actually have with your players, and can you reinforce? The problem with that is you've got a squad of 16, and that's a lot of individual moments. It's a lot more easy and efficient to just get 16 in and start kind of praising those who are on task. So stuff like this has got to be taken with a little bit of a pinch of salt. You know, the other stuff with praise is humans are pretty good at detecting when things are false and when things are a little bit phony. Fake smiles for one, fake praise they can smell a mile off. Over praise when it's not really deserved is another thing that really turns kids off. So I'd be saving that public praise for when it's, you know, really deserved, with the caveat that you've got we've all got a spectrum of responders. So some might respond really well to praise publicly. Some they might be an introvert, for example, for whatever reason. You know, I've got a couple in the squad that I coach. Praise does absolutely nothing for them, and actually, public praise in front of the rest of the squad is, I would say, worse than nothing. So I have to be really careful with the way that I try and tailor my approach to those individuals, and it is literally a kind of earshot conversation where possible. So I told you I'd go on a tangent there, James.
No, it's fine, mate. It's fine. I've just fired something up around. So when we were looking at this around, probably something to reflect on, like Jack says, afterwards, after this going on. It's when you've last, if you think back to your last session, it's where do you find yourself spending your time? Do we find ourselves spending our time fighting in that sort of sanction area? Don't do this type thing, or do we look more in praise? My question, Jack, probably back on that was, do you plan for those two-way moments? So prior to your session, would you have a rough idea as to, do you know what, it's little Johnny who I'm going to try and really connect with this evening? I'm not that fussed about the others, but it's really, I've got a reason for wanting to connect with him.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, more so now, definitely. We're really lucky, I guess, because we've just had 4 new facilities put down in Liverpool, and all of them have a like changing block as well as 3G pitches. So we'll often have like a team meeting in the changing room before we go out. So, you know, we're lucky we're under 16s. We can do that. Now, some of you might be able to do similar things at the club. Some of them are, you know, it's relatively new to me in terms of grassroots coaching, because most of us, you know, we turn up at our facility and you've got those 60 minutes that the meter's turned on for, and then they kick you off, don't they, straight away. So we're lucky we've got a bit more flexibility and freedom, but having that extra time has really helped in dissecting things. You know, for example, Wednesday night we might sit down and we'll spend 10 minutes or so talking about the previous week's game and some good things and some stuff that we can improve on. It's a nice way of kind of just, I guess, reconnecting before going out and doing the session. And the other thing it does is it gives me an opportunity as well for that walk between the change rooms and the pitch to again pick off 1 or 2 individuals who I can have that one-to-one with. So yeah, I think having a plan for both. We've not really talked about sanctions. Again, this is something where my thinking is changing somewhat. I'm a big fan, and I'd urge people to go down a rabbit hole on a guy called Alfie Kohn. That's Kohn. And if you've got time, you might have time in the current climate to his book Punished by Rewards is absolutely outstanding. It's the most highlighted book I've got in my Kindle collection, which says something. And he presents a really, really compelling case against sanctions and rewards. And I would be willing to bet that most of the people logged on tonight, dare say, most of the people that have issues with misbehavior in their sessions probably use sanctions or rewards in some way or another, maybe dare so too much. And we can go into a bit more depth on that if you want, James.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a real good thing to. Paul, Alan, are you able to speak on here? So, Paul, are you online, mate? Is your name, mate? No. I'll take that. Paul's made a really good point in the chat box around when we go back and we try and link back in this relationship thing around not liking public praise as much, and I think you referred to it, Jack, earlier on there. But Paul works with a pan disability team, and so Paul's players, he's give the example there of some that are autistic. The way he uses praise is via his parents. So his message goes to the parent, and their parent relays the praise to them. And I think it's a real good consideration, certainly for general coaches out there, is that when we're delivering praise, how do we deliver it, and what's the best way to deliver it that meets the needs of them players? And I think, Jack, I don't know if you've got anything around any examples around that general praise versus actually being really specific, but delivered it directly to players to make it feel more valuable.
Yeah, I think praise, I wouldn't completely dismiss it. I think it can be really useful if used in the right way. But you're right there, James. There's another principle of effective praise is that you're praising the learning, if you like, or the task rather than the actual person themselves. So again, in that specific, in a more specific way that you can. And just going back to the point before, and I really hope this doesn't come across as insensitive, but I think it's quite a strong way of making the point, is this notion of responders. So we all respond differently, some vastly more so than the others. So you've only got to look at the current pandemic. You've got a spectrum of non-responders, I guess, people, asymptomatic people who carry a virus who don't show any symptoms to it, right the way to the other end of the spectrum who, unfortunately have lost their lives. So, and if we think about that in a coaching context, you've got, let's just take praise and punishments and rewards. You'll get people, children and young people who'll sit on that on a spectrum of how well they respond to this sort of stuff. So yeah, praise, don't dismiss it. Use it carefully, use it specifically, try to use it individually. And get to know how your individuals respond to it. I think feedback is something that is probably more is running around my head more now than praise. Is actually having that relationship to provide honest feedback, positive, critical, whatever that may be.
Yeah, good stuff. Paul Carrigan, Paul made a sort of a point earlier on, and I have seen the questions earlier on, guys. So don't panic. We will get through them. I'm just trying to keep it in a succinct order, for whatever that might mean. So Paul Carrigan, and a few there, mate. I don't know if you want to give an example. So we're kind of touching on some bits now.
Yeah, it's cheers, James. Evening, Jack. Just something that I've observed, kind of about external or outside influences. I'm coaching under 9s, so match day Saturday morning, training nights Thursday at 6. And I going back to that session that you said about being dragged through a hedge backwards, 2 or 3 times this year I've walked off with that feeling. Had a chat with the parents about it, and there seems to be some kind of correlation between the kids spending a lot of time gaming that week, in particular games like Fortnite or stuff like that. And it really does seem to change the way they react and respond on a training. I just wondered if either you or any of the other coaches have had similar observations or occurrences.
Yeah, I don't know. I would be careful to attribute a direct cause between gaming and misbehavior. But what I would say is that the children that grow up in houses or in stressful environments, they generally find it harder to concentrate, harder to sit still, harder to come back from disappointments, harder to follow instructions. So I don't know how well you know the home life, but there could be things going on at home or at school that is quite stressful, that we don't know about under the surface, that is then manifesting itself, when they come to us. Again, I guess thinking back, it's how can we improve that relationship, maybe not only with the player but with the parent, and to try and get them on board and I guess bring them round to a more appropriate way of thinking.
Yeah, Cheers, Jack. Thank you.
Darren, Scaife, I think this will probably take us up to the clap, mate, to be honest, but just looking at your question around your putting players in 1v1s, if two players are better and you wanted to challenge but are consistently misbehaving, I don't know if you want to give some context to that, mate.
Yeah, evening, Jack. Basically, in my mind, I've got players that are probably just ahead of the rest of the squad in terms of ability at the moment. But they are two of the, how can I put this, the most outlandish of the group. So if I put them together, they don't necessarily take on board what I'm saying or really focus on the session that I'm putting on. Whereas if I put them with other kids, it seems a little bit too easy for them. So again, they're not getting kind of what I want out of it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Do I continue trying to put them together, and again, obviously with this whole sanction and praise thing that's coming in nowadays, do I stick them together and pay a bit more attention to them to focus them, or do I try and keep them apart to challenge them differently? If that question makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I think so. I'll try. I mean, it's difficult without knowing individuals, but I think the one of the best ways that you can get children to misbehave is to either bore them or challenge them, or put them in a situation that is far too challenging for them. So I see that this often with grassroots teams, is that, you know, you might have a mini soccer team, but two are streets ahead, and they almost need each other to have that optimal challenge, because if they don't have each other, then they find everything out. Let's just say 1v1, for example, is the practice, and they find it too easy. What I would say is, what does it have to be 1v1? Can we not, if we wanted to kind of separate these two and get them working with other players, you know, is there any reason why we can't have them play 1 versus 2? And so I don't know, when you say outlandish, I'm starting to think now, are they outlandish in terms of behaviour, or are they outlandish because they
just
are?
The behaviour, Jack, just the behaviour.
Yeah. I see. It's a difficult, really, without knowing the players, being more specific. But I guess where do you want to focus your attention, and how extreme is the behaviour? If it is kind of just horseplay, again, what is the message if you are spending most of your time and effort trying to get them to come on board and behave, whereas it potentially could be focused on those who are there, who are willing to learn. Now, the horseplay, actually, they might be learning, as that sounds. It just might be what they're doing at that time to try and learn. So I would try and I guess take a deep breath and relax, maybe, to start with, make informed decisions.
Yeah, I get that. I think the 2v1 thing is a good point. I think just that there has been occasions where their behaviour has been kind of detrimental to the rest of the group, so they've been watching these two boys and not focusing on what me and the lad that helps me out have been trying to get across to them. But cheers for that, Jack. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll have a think. I think we're going to go to a break in a second anyway. But
we are.
Because there is some things that maybe we can start rethinking around that. But yeah, is that, James? I don't know what time is it now. Is there a question quickly that we want to leave me with? We go clap?
It's 59. It's 59 minutes too. So let's get to the clap, and then just guys, when you come back in for the clap, if you just drop a note in just to say that you're back. We usually start back probably about 2 or 3 minutes afterwards, guys.
I'm going to nip out.
So yeah, if you want to jump, no worries.
See you in a minute. Just fill me water up, James.
Yeah, no worries, Paul. No bother. It's like people are starting to drop back in. How's things on the island, Ben?
Very well, thank you, mate. Bit wet and miserable at the moment, but apart from that, we're all good. How you guys getting on over there? Yeah,
not too bad. Not too bad. Is the island locked down officially? Is it?
Yeah. We're doing really well over here, actually. We've had I think this week, in the past week, we've had about 4 new cases in a week. So things are going quite well. Construction have gone back to work this week. There's like golf and things starting up again this weekend, fishing and stuff. So it's starting to creep back to some form of normality, which is quite nice.
Very good.
Very good. Yeah. Hopefully not too much longer.
For a game of golf.
Is that Mr. Morris there, is it?
It is. How are you doing? All right.
Yeah, very well, thank you. You can come over and get a Perry chicken, Dave.
Oh, lovely. I've still got my loyalty card as well.
They're missing you.
I think that looks like everybody's back in. I think by the looks on it, there's certainly a number of people back. I don't know. I think this is kind of off topic, to be honest, but I noticed in the chat function there around people having issues with games, and I don't know, Jack, if you wanted to quickly touch on. I know it's not kind of on topic, but it is in a way around the sort of gamification stuff. More, I think you've got a resource that potentially you could just refer people to. Is it with your podcast potentially? Was it with Amy? Was it with Amy?
Amy's stuff, yeah. I mean, this was the talk about what was it? The Fortnite thing, wasn't it? Yeah. So I think there is, like I said, that the more engaging that we can make our sessions, I think the less likely that we're going to have to deal with misbehavior. So we have to, as uncomfortable as it is, we do have to look inwards first, and start to explore those reasons why. So, it 1v1, if that's where the misbehavior is occurring, then is there a way of, is something else that we could do potentially? I'm not saying never do 1v1s, but if that's where the problem's occurring, then let's try and navigate a way around it. And maybe, But Amy Price, a colleague of ours at the FA, she's done a PhD on how the principles of video game design can be borrowed, if you like, within sports context, and she actually tried it within a football environment. I won't steal her thunder, but I would encourage you to go down that route and have a look at her stuff, because she shares plenty of content. And I think what I like about what Amy's done is she shared all the speed bumps along the way, so all the stuff that has gone wrong, if you like. She's not afraid to sort of say, this is what I thought I was going to get out of it, and it completely fell flat on its face. And for this, these are the reasons why, I think. But she's kind of arrived at some sensible middle ground now, I think. Yeah,
and I think I would certainly, when I listen to it's Liverpool, it's on the Liverpool FA podcast, so we'll post a link to it.
I think,
but it certainly
it might have been number 10.
Yeah, it certainly challenged my thinking in a way of like, well, if that's what we live in an age where kids are growing up, I've got a 4-year-old who can work his way around an iPad better than I can now. So they're growing up with this. It's natural. It's this 21st century learner. So how do we tailor, I suppose, if we're looking inwards, how do we tailor our sessions to the gaming world? And I'm not saying that that's the complete answer, because it's probably not, but it's a piece of the jigsaw that if you've got, Paul mentioned there around a number of kids that are constantly gaming, well, why not try and bring some of that into our coaching, especially around, for me, the things around levels and save points and allowing kids to cheat and things like that were certainly something. I mean, I know your thoughts, Jack, if you've ever tried it, but I'm guessing it would take quite a lot of planning. Quite a lot of detailed planning.
And I would say that that's the kind of finer details that you can sprinkle on once you've got the big rocks in place. That the big rocks that video games offer that that we can lend from straight away is they offer autonomy, so a voice, a choice. They offer a feeling of competence. So naturally, you'll play when you pick up a video game, or when a child picks up a video game, they will play it at a level that is naturally challenging for them and enjoyable. So you don't see too many 21-0 thrashings on a video game, because they'll either way, but because they want to test themselves at a level that they feel that is right for them at that moment. So straight away that we can take those two things and build that into our own practice design, and that's just by understanding practice a little bit better and the butterfly effects that we can have on practice. So there is only two things that a coach can control. That is the practices that the players do, so the layout, the design, and what have you, the rules of the game, and our own behaviours. So let's really focus in on those two things and get them right. And I think if we do that, then we're more likely to again prevent unwanted what we would term as misbehaviour. We're probably going to get better behaviour and more engaged players at the other end.
Yeah, definitely. And I think thanks for that, David. Amy Price, David just put in, she's doing a webinar. If anybody's interested, that it's slightly off topic, but I think it definitely bears some food for thought. She's doing a webinar on the 29th of May for the FA around, and her PhD, like David says, is around the gamification. So it's certainly something that if that's what your trend of your players is into, then it's certainly something I would check out, guys. On that. Interesting point, Jim. I don't know if you want to just unmute yourself, mate, and just give a bit more detail around that, Jim Fallon. And I know Ben's commented.
Yeah, hello again, mate. All it is, again, just the experiences. I think, we can, as coaches, we can all feel, the parents' eyes on us, perhaps at different times. Yeah. When we're coaching kids, and if they're playing up and if they're not on topic, and if you can lose yourself in thinking, blooming hell, the parents, what must the parents be thinking, this, that, the other. So yeah, I just think ego. Well, that's one example. Then you got at games when you're trying to get your team to be competitive or whatever. I just think your own ego as a coach can really influence the behaviour of players, to the negative, I would say.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with more of that. I still have moments myself when, things don't go to plan, and I know for a fact that none of the parents are thinking any bad of me, but you still have those moments where you doubt yourself, and it is horrible. But we're infallible humans just bundling around, kind of trying to make sense of it all, aren't we? So, and I think one of the best things I've done this season was I took a session, and it was in February, and my head was absolutely all over the place. And I just got off a plane from the Isle of Man, actually, and I came back specifically to take this session with the lads, and it wasn't the best. Honestly, it was poor. It was directional. There was two teams playing against each other. The big goals were out. There was balls going to the goal, but it was just something that wasn't quite right. And I brought the lad, when we finished the session, I brought the lads in at the end of the session, and I apologised. I just said, look, that wasn't really our normal standard, was it, or my normal standard? And reluctantly, no. And I'm like, no, come on, you've got to. I've got to take the rough with the smooth. You've got to have the confidence and the trust that you as players can give me that feedback. And so one or two kind of piped up, went, well, no, not really. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm sorry. We'll put it right next week. But that was an off night for me tonight, and I do apologise. And that actually, I think, was a really powerful moment in my own coaching that again, just only added to the relationship that and the bonds that I've got with the lads that I coach.
That makes sense, Jim. Jim, when you mentioned parents there, when you said that you feel like the eyes are on you, what do you mean in terms of, is that from a coach behaviour perspective that you feel it might impact people?
Also, I mean, you can almost get in a cycle, especially, there's been times where I've coached and it's not just the grassroots, parents are paying money for the children to go and learn, basically. So it's not always just the children that want the children there. It's also the parents want the children there to learn. And like I say, particularly in those circumstances, it only takes one child out of the group, doesn't it, to go off on one or to be doing something else, and you're feeling like you're losing control, and you're feeling like, am I giving value for money here? That. So it's just lots of different pressures, and I think you've got to be careful in your own behaviour that you don't overact almost and start trying to be like Stalin or someone, try to get a grip of it now and sort it out.
And I just jumping in. I think that is. I fully agree that there's certain coaching contexts where the relationship between the parents and the coach has become transactional, and I think that's quite dangerous. So it's like I'm paying for this service, and I expect this level in return. When grassroots sport, that's not traditionally the way that it's been done. It's very much been done on good faith, and I think that is one of the reasons, Jim, why punishments and rewards have become so prevalent in grassroots football, because I'm going to be really careful what I say here, because they work, and I don't mean that in a good way. Punishments and rewards work in the short term at either promoting or limiting behaviour, but they're not especially effective in the long term. So I think one of the most common things I see out there is that thing that a lot of coaches do at the end of the session or the end of the game, where they get the shiny thing out and they then attribute that shiny thing to the star of the week, whoever the performer is, and they build it up publicly, and they go, there you go, and we try and use this man of the match or the trainer of the week or whatever it is, this reward as a way of shaping behaviour. But actually, all the evidence will suggest that it is that they are effective in the short term, but in the long term, they do more harm than good. And in fact, if you want to damage the intrinsic motivation of your players, then start introducing rewards, because this is the kind of taboo subject that we haven't really touched upon yet. And it is the common practice that is absolutely everywhere, that we don't really talk about, and we don't really question why we do it. But again, we can discuss that if you want, James.
Yeah, definitely, because it kind of brings us sort of onto it. So yeah, if you want, Jack, do you want to delve into a little bit more detail around the impact that potentially we see these sort of external rewards? I mean, I think the obvious one for people listening in as well is around the monetary value as well. Some people attached to scoring goals, to winning that trophy, to getting the result at the end of the game. I don't know if you want to share, Jack, some of your experiences around, or your thoughts potentially around where you sit with that.
I mean, the thing to remember is all these things are done with good faith. And they're done mainly because that's the way that we've always done it. We all probably went to school and there was a star chart on the wall, and we did a bit of good work, and instead of kind of getting some feedback on what we'd done, the easy thing for the teacher to do was kind of give us a sticker and go, well done, there you go. And I don't know. Well, all the evidence would suggest that is not a great way to go in the long term, because especially with the monetary one, you're turning play into work, So I don't know if any of you heard the story of Tom Sawyer and painting the gate, but that is a good little fable to have a look at. But I caught myself thinking of this example over Easter weekend when I was painting the fence, and I had the best time ever. 3 solid days with some great music on, doing nothing but painting a fence for 7 hours a day in nice weather. And I thought, if somebody paid me to do this, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much. But it's the mere fact that I was doing it purely for the pleasure of it. As soon as you start introducing bonus schemes and rewards and what have you, you turn what is essentially play, something that is inherently enjoyable, into something that is work. And the man of the match things, or the trophies at the end of the session, I think now there's never been a better time to reconsider why we do these things, because I've lost count of the amount of times I've had this conversation with coaches down the years, and the stock response is, well, I'm halfway through the season, I can't stop now. Well, now is a great time to really think about why you do it, because I really, other than maybe our ego, if we're honest about it, and to help boost the players' ego, I'm not sure what else we get from that in the long term. And I'm pretty sure it's more harm than good when you look at the evidence that's out there.
Do you feel, Jack, on that there's and certainly the coaches can chip in with this, there's a parent influence as well that impacts some of our behaviours to do things like this, so they see the other club down the road doing it. The social media world as we live in now, let's be honest, I go mad with my wife when she take a photo of something to put it on Instagram because it's something good that potentially we're doing. Do you feel that world is sort of having an impact now on these type of things?
Yeah, undoubtedly. And I think it's new technology, and we haven't really learned how to use it properly. It's a new form of communication. I think, again, if you're a coach of teenagers, especially teenage girls, I really worry about what Instagram is doing to that generation of people. Slightly off topic on that one, but yeah, I think that it is like there is this kind of pressure to be seen to be keeping up with the Joneses, and the Joneses now are everywhere because all you've got to do is open up your social media account, and if you follow a load of clubs from around the region or even the country, it all looks like a bed of roses, all these fantastic things that they're doing, which is one of the reasons why I limit my social media to 5 minutes a day and then the app shuts off, because I don't think it's very healthy. I really don't. It's not healthy for us to compare players against each other. I don't think that is very healthy. So we do that naturally when we bring out the man of the match trophy, or the star of the week or whatever it is. We create this comparison amongst one another. I would be trying to urge you to get your players to compare themselves to who they were last week, and get you as coaches to compare yourself to who you were last week or last month, or you as a club to where you were last season. So stuff that is much more in your control than worrying about what the club down the road are doing. Let them do that. But the quickest way to failure is trying to please everybody. And I think sometimes we do that. Well, we do that with rewards. And the best story I can give you is, and apologies, some of you will have heard this, no doubt. I've bored a number of people with it, but it's so perfect. So my other half's little sister, what's she now? She's 13 now. When she was 6, I remember sitting in our house down the road in Liverpool, and it was a Saturday lunchtime, and she came back to ours, and she came storming through the door with a trophy, shiny trophy. It was bigger than her, and rewards do work in the short term. Remember that. And I said to her, "All right, where have you been, and what did you get that for?" And she said, "I've been to LIPA, which is the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts." And she said, "I'm the star of the week." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" She goes, "I was well behaved, so I got this." I go, "She's 6, remember?" I said, "So does that mean that you're going to behave next week?" And God's honest truth, she said to me, no, nobody wins it twice in a row. So a 6-year-old has quickly figured out the way that adults feel that they've got it. You know, when we introduce these trophies as a way of controlling children's behavior, the kids quickly work out the stuff that sits under the current of how we use these things. They're not silly at all. They know, they pick up on this stuff very quickly. So I would urge people to really reconsider, you know, if you're using trophies and rewards and shiny things to try and control or manipulate or develop, whatever you want to call it, children's behavior, really give them a rethink, because I haven't seen any evidence yet that says that they're beneficial in the long term. And for everything that we want out of our players, you know, creativity being right up there, they're brilliant at destroying that. Because what we do is we take the shortest possible route to get to that shiny thing.
Well, I think everybody's quickly scribbling out their we're not doing that next week now. But I don't think it's certainly not that way. Jackie makes a good point. Yeah, I think you think it makes them greedy. It might have probably some adverse effects on certainly the way that the kids perceive themselves. So I think the other thing, Jack, on that was around, well, what can coaches do then? So we're saying, well, actually, that might I don't know what's there. That might be, yeah. Let's think of, well, how do we influence sort of the getting them to reflect on what they looked like last week. What sort of things could coaches do to try and sort of emphasise that?
Oh, good question. Wow. Well, I guess we don't really have the opportunity to do it at the moment, but I don't know if a lot of coaches coach their own children, so I would potentially start there with a really. One of the best coaches around here around Liverpool that I know is a grassroots coach at a club down the road, and occasionally I see him because some of the courses and things that we deliver shares a pitch with them, and I see the way that he works with his kids, and it's fantastic. He doesn't treat them like children. He allows them to be children, but he really connects well with them, and he really encourages that kind of two-way dialogue, and it starts with him and his son, and he gets, you know, some kids, if you let them, they will be brutally honest, and they've got no problem with that whatsoever. That might change as they get a little bit older into adolescence, but again, maybe dependent on the relationship that you've got with them. But I would start maybe with a conversation with them around, you know, what is it that let me rewind a little bit. Coaches are really not very good at understanding their own behaviours. So there's, again, some great evidence that suggests there's a kind of 80-20 principle between what coaches say they do and what they actually do, where the players, it's the other way around. So look into Chris Cushion for some of his work on that, because he's a real, you know, you talk about experts, he is an expert in this stuff. And I think uncovering those blind spots that we have is a really good start. And again, could be uncomfortable, but we've got to be vulnerable enough to take it, and really start thinking about, you know, what's the stuff that we can, I guess, what's the lead domino, what's the things that we can do that have a ripple effect on down the rest of the line. If we're talking about, you know, the world that we live in and kind of preventing that unwanted behavior, I would say try and get off to the best possible start that we can. Now, some of that might be out of your control. So some of you might have things that are going on before your sessions. So how do you use that time beforehand to make sure that you get off to that best possible start? So it could be a number of different things, but now really is the time to think about investing in your own thinking and your own, you know, yourself, so that when we do get back going again, we can hit the ground running, perhaps.
Yeah, spot on. I think, and it's certainly something that we probably haven't touched on yet, but it's what happens when things do go wrong. So yeah. Ultimately, I think we're in that world where naturally, and coaches, feel free to jump in with any examples on this. Listen, we're dealing with, I'm at home now with a 17-month-old and a 4-year-old, and every 5 minutes things are going wrong in our house. And it's kind of, well, what happens? So what's the action plan then? I don't know, Jack, if you've got anything that you can share around, right? What's our backup then? So it goes wrong.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Well, and this is the bit where I have to hold my hands up and say I'm starting to question myself now. I'm reviewing the evidence, but happy to go with some stuff. I think there might be some slides on there actually.
There is. I've got one. I'll just drop it.
There's a kind of little bit. We can talk through some of them, and I'll see where we are. But what I would say is, as I've mentioned, I'm heavily influenced by Alfie Cohn's work on this, and he would say that there should be no punishments. I tend to disagree slightly in the fact that I think, when these children that we're coaching, they're going to grow to be adults, and in the adult world, if you or I misbehave at work, or if I do something stupid on this webinar tonight, it's going to be consequences for me. So I think there has to be a line somewhere that there is a consequence. But what I would do is start by saying that is it a behavioural problem or an engagement problem? And are we just putting a punitive consequence in there, or is it a teachable moment? Do we actually use the moment to try and teach and to, like we said before, shape some behaviours in a more positive direction? So, and if we go through the first one here, so we talked about catch them being good. So wherever possible, with the right person at the right time, if there's an opportunity to give feedback, positive feedback on someone's behaviour or someone's learning, then that's fantastic. And most of our work, I would say, would be done up at this end. The classic case, and it's the one that you get asked most often, isn't it? Is I brought them in, and there's that one who keeps bouncing the ball. Now, here's the irony with this one. And if I asked you to be completely honest and swear an oath here, how many of you are doing something else right now? So how many of you now are on WhatsApp or got the telly on in the background, or got yourself on mute, or kind of half paying attention? Yeah, there's 32 on the webinar. If there's 20, if there's less than 20, I'd be surprised. So, we do it. We naturally do it. So don't take it personally when the kids do it, because our attention span is probably longer than theirs as well. So, but that being said, physical proximity. So you've got that child that potentially isn't paying attention, isn't on task. Instead of calling them out in front of everybody, just standing close to them can often have an impact. One of the things that we got taught when we were teaching in that year was don't always just stand at the front. Actually move around the classroom and move behind, so that some of the children don't know whether you're looking at them or not. And that was quite a good little physical tip. Questions to refocus. So there's what I'll do, James. I'll try and dig out. I might still have it on my hard drive. A number of actual examples of this. So whatever on task might mean, just some short questions or prompts to get them back on. Again, number 4, this could be a hierarchy of things. So privately repeating directions, again, not necessarily calling the individual out in front of everyone, acknowledging why. So this is an interesting one. So not just dealing with the symptoms, but actually thinking about the cure. The cause. So why is it that they're misbehaving? So it could be a number of different reasons, but actually acknowledging why it is that they're off task or misbehaving. Rule reminders is an interesting one. So I don't know, some of you might have quite clear rules that you have in your club or within your team. I guess the bit I would say about that was, have those rules being kind of imposed on the kids, or have you developed them with the kids? And I think if the latter is probably a much more successful long-term strategy, in terms of, if you've got rules within your teams, have you included the kids, and are they the more simple, the better. I think it was Bill Walsh, the old San Francisco 49ers coach, that said the fewer the rules a coach has, the fewer there are for the players to break. So do think about that if you're incorporating rules. Choices, yeah. This is the bit where it gets a little bit sketchy for me. But you giving a clear choice. So it's either, an example might be, Ben, you're misbehaving. Ben, choose to get engaged, choose to come on board, or you're choosing to sit out, for example, for a minute. So you're actually putting the choice onto the player. But again, that I don't think that, my thinking's a little bit off with this one, but I don't think it really deals with the cause. Again, we're just treating symptoms rather than dealing with the cause here. Using those consequences if you don't get the response that you want, and then the last but not least, exit strategies. And what we tend to do is we lose our patience, lose our rag, and we go straight from 0 to 9. And it's like the one little bit of misbehavior, and it's like, right, get off the pitch. And that, that's worst case scenario, but you see it so often. And I've had a moment this season with the 16s that I coach where, I lost my rag. It was, sometime before Christmas, and we had half a pitch, and the under 18s were on the other half. We had low numbers and they had low numbers, and it was perfect for a game of 11 aside. So I spoke to the 18s coach. Yeah, fixed it up, bang, and we played a game. So it was kind of last thing at night. We brought the boys in, and I'm there going, this has been great. They've played against lads the year above them. It's going to be a really good challenge for them. They'll have really enjoyed this. And they've come off, and two of them gone, that was rubbish. That I hated that. And that caught me completely off guard, and I just snapped. And I didn't have, I didn't practice what I preached, didn't keep control, and I lost my rag. And it's funny because I teach this stuff, and what I quickly had to do was I could not let those two boys leave that facility that night without at least attempting to repair the relationship. And I did some way, but then I had to make sure that the next session, the two people I needed to speak to on the way out and spend some time with was those two to get that relationship back on board. But yeah, we all go to work. We might have had a stressful day. We turn up at coaching. All we've planned for this really good session. The kids don't know how much effort we've put into planning it. And suddenly, like, two of them start fighting or whatever, and it's like, have they got any idea? Right, get off the pitch. And I think that is a real last resort. So that's my thinking around that at the moment, James.
Yeah, good. And I kind of, when I was looking over this afternoon, I kind of sort of, I felt that it's important, especially around this where we look for consistency. We deal a lot at the county with, and it's already been mentioned in the chat function around codes of conduct, and I definitely agree that the codes of conduct are definitely useful. What I would also put a caveat on with that, and I don't know what Jack's thoughts are on this, but is that they're a piece of paper as well. Sometimes, or most of the time, what the kids don't see. So ultimately, the kind of, when we're talking about the real sort of on the grass stuff, they're kind of irrelevant to the kids. I think Louis made a real good point in here around how do we get players together to come up with some positive behaviours. And I just wanted, it brings us on nicely because I just wanted, we'll go through that. We'll just share this one and we'll come back to one. So Ben, I don't know if you're still with us. Ian Jack's one of the ones that's sort of doing something else, mate, Mr. Snowden. But Ben done, I know, and he won't take anything for this, and he won't want to show stuff, but he done some, and I'll get this out to people that's kind of in a bit better than what the photos show. Ben, I don't know if you want to give a quick sort of thing as to what you've done with the players and how it had an impact, not just on the team, but then into the school and things like that.
Yeah, I'm still here, mate. And Jack, I was fully concentrating. Honestly, I wasn't on my phone. So yeah, I think a lot of people have heard this, so I'll keep it really short. And it was based on Jack's video, so I'll give the credit. I watched Jack's video. I was having major problems with this was an under 6 stroke under 7s group. Having major problems, spending most of my time dealing with behaviour, just over enthusiasm in a lot of cases. Old school teacher, so a qualified teacher. So obviously used to hard and fast, don't do that, don't do this, and took on board the catch them in. So what we did was we set about every session. So I'll be honest, I ignored football for the first block of work that we did, and we just focused on getting the environment correct for the players to be in, where I could then start to do what I wanted to do, which was sort of coach and enjoy what I was doing as a volunteer. So we really tried to catch the kids doing some really good things, and then we recognised them at the session. The kids spoke them through. We started to put them on the board, and obviously everything was around being positive rather than a negative. So don't do this. So we used the B, so we sent Bs. We used that, but ultimately you can see in the top corner as well, sometimes we had to treat behaviour as behaviour, and so we had this yellow and red card system like they would in football, but we never really had to use it. The yellow card was a whisper in the ear to the person to say, as Jack's just gone on, to say, after a while, what would you get on the football field if you were messing around? A yellow card. Well, we don't want a red card, do we? So trying to influence the behaviour that way. So yeah, it was something that was sort of really proactive with the kids, and eventually everybody started to use the sort of is that good B squad behaviour? So we call ourselves a B squad. Is that good behaviour? And eventually, I think the biggest plaudit that we had was that Jack came home, my son, not named after Jack. I do love Jack, but not that much to name my son after him. My son Jack came home and said, Dad, Mrs. and I won't name the name, said today, I'm going to tell Ben that you're not using B squad behaviour in school. So it had actually gone across to the school. So I'd like to thank Jack very much for his inspiration in putting that together.
I remember you when you pulled that together, Ben, and it was inspiring stuff. And I would urge, obviously, I'm assuming we've got quite a range of age groups that the coaches on the webinar tonight coach, but that was with an under 7s group, wasn't it, Ben? I think, and it shows that this sort of stuff, you developed it with them. It can be really powerful, and it doesn't actually take that much thought. So I'll give you an example of something that we did with our lads a couple of years ago. Gave them, some of you might have heard this before, I've talked about this a few times now, but the more I think about it, the more important it has been for us in terms of creating an environment where we don't have to manage misbehaviour. So just gave the lads a list of values. There must have been about 50 or so words. Take them home and just look at them and think about them and note down the ones that mean the most, that are most important to you. And we'll come back and take them in and look at them. What we did is we brought them back in. I think we had about a squad of, say, 16 at the time. And we took them back in, looked at them, and the two most common words was loyalty and respect. So, okay, great. That says that for our team, these are the two most important things that you're telling me. So how do we then use that to develop, I guess, some unwritten rules without being so formal? And it started a conversation. Well, what does loyalty look like, and what does respect look like, and what does it look like when it's done really well, and what does it look like when it's not done so well? And that started a conversation that the lads then brought up about, treating your teammates with respect, giving them good feedback, trying to help your team, because the better that your teammate is, the better that's going to help you to be, and so on, so on. And it really led to some rich conversations with the lads about the way that we were going to be. And we haven't really had to be too draconian and stuff and force things on, but that just a simple exercise that has really, really helped.
Yeah, good. It's really interesting because there's lots of things that, and I know out there's some real good stuff going on around how we engage. I'll come to the white of an example with Hoddy, if you don't mind, in a second. Ben, I don't know, just around that sort of, and I'm not going to bang on anybody, but I thought this was really, so I have a thing. I used to, I don't know where people sit with this, but I used to think that the parents were kind of the devil in football. They didn't used to help at all, and you know what? And I'm quite happy to sit there and say that I'm completely wrong. I think that certainly having parents as your advantage poses massive benefits to us as grassroots coaches. And I quite liked when Ben had sent this through. I quite like this, Ben. I don't know if you wanted to give a sort of an overview. I'm not going to steal your thunder around how you incorporated parents into the actual B squad behaviour.
Yeah, no problem. Again, listen, this isn't something that I've come up with. This is something stolen. So don't, reallocation of resources is a coach's major tool. So I'm not going to claim this is my own. Although the content of it was, I saw an idea from another coach, stole it and claimed it as mine. So I'm a very big advocate of England DNA. And well aware that, as Jack said, it sometimes, although I'm delighted to see more and more as I'm out there, initially this was doing something completely different and challenging people. So, when I was telling people to stay on the ball and, I didn't mind if they didn't pass the ball, it blew people's minds for a long period. And naturally, parents were comparing our team with the other teams from the area when we go into central venue tournaments. So this was something that I put together really to, one, just keep them on task with what we'd been working on in training. What were the things that we were wanting to get out of them so that we could just keep them on point in terms of remembering how far we'd came. And it also was to really address conversations on the way home as well. So, it gave them some areas to really talk about. So I noticed she did that really well, and we ticked that box. So these were given to parents at the start of our games, and they were asked to circle them. And ultimately, if they saw their child displaying any of these behaviours or completing any of these tasks, but we felt it was important, as we'd been working on behaviour, to include a lot of those things in there because, again, Pete Sturgis, he said, I challenge you to find a kid that doesn't do something right during a session. Even if it's tying shoelaces, they could be the one person who ties their shoelace and it stays tied for the whole game, which as a coach at foundation level is brilliant because then I don't have to tie their shoelaces. I'm doing the other 50 kids that I've got. So it was challenging parents to see, that actually their child might not be as advanced at this moment in time from a technical point of view, but you know what? They're just a brilliant kid because they've been looking after their teammates. They were enjoying themselves, and it just focused on, and everybody walked out of that with some positive feedback for their kids.
Yeah, and what strikes me when I look at that, Ben, is that there's 12 things there, and pretty much all of them are within the kids' control. Whereas the outcome of the game, which is normally the first question or the thing that the parents level whether there has been a successful morning or not on, is so far out of the kids' control it isn't even worth thinking about. Whereas, like you said, they've all got a good opportunity to do some, if not most of these in a game.
Good stuff. I don't want to, because I did throw it in because I think it was really good. It's on a similar theme. Hoddy, are you still with us? Because this was part of, I don't know if you're still there, Hoddy. This was part of sort of Hoddy's work around his level 2. And I know he won't mind us sharing. Are you still there, mate?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on, pal. I don't know if you want to just because we've got a few minutes left, just give some insight into how you went about this and the impact that it had.
Well, I was going to say I stole this off Ben, but now I found out Ben stole this off Jack. He actually stole it off Jack. It was actually, I think it was back into level 1. This was James,
right,
when they were under 7s. We're now at, well, nearly under 10s now. And we were, I think, down at White Amateurs, we tend to have a lot of, like a large group in each age group. So at this time, I had 20 kids, 20 under 7s for what's maybe at maximum an hour, but usually less by the time you get on and off. And it was just, we talked about core values and how to get the kids interested or give them something to, I would say, something to work towards. And we've got a lot of ability, different ability among 20 kids. So we introduced the amateurs attitude. 2 things with it. Firstly, don't call it the road to Wembley. That's what I called the chat at the end, because every kid that thought once they got to the end of it, there was a trip to Wembley. There wasn't. There was some boot bags or some keyrings or whatever it was at the end of it. But what it did do was when we went down the list of encouraging and supporting each other, and it really helped the full group. And I'm going to say what I mean by that is we've got a range of abilities. Some who were quite high at the time, some who weren't as much, but the encourage, support and help your teammates during training games really came out amongst it. And it wasn't, I know Jack talked about trophies, handing out trophies and things like that. It may have been a bad thing, and we didn't down that route. But when we done the road to Wembley side of it, it was a team reward at the end of it. So once I got to the end of it, if they showed the attributes that we put in the amateurs attitude, if they showed that in each session, and somebody got to the end, be it one of them, 2 of them, 3 of them, it would have been a team reward. And it really, really worked. And it really, at under 7s and under 6 under 7s, when they're all just coming into big manic, it really, really focusing. Funny enough, I don't use this so much now, because in the first 2 years, under 7s and under 8s, I often brought the amateurs attitude board out, and they knew right away. And the core values that they picked up off that, I'd like to think are stuck with them now as we move into under 10s. So all them things on there really, really worked for us, James.
Yeah, and I think that comes back into Jack's point earlier on, Jack, you made about, actually, I don't have a lot to do with now with the under-16s, because we've probably done a lot of good work early on. And I think I wanted to highlight this tonight only because, and the stuff that Ben's doing, I'm sure, by the way, there's a lot more out there. Please feel free to share some of the stuff that you're doing. I felt that the grounding that you're giving with these players is absolutely crucial in moving forward and setting those. I'm a big thing I'm a big thing around developing this culture and developing this arena and this environment where actually some of the stuff that you've put in there around behaviours, we are creating professional footballers, but we're not. We're creating good people, and I think that there's a lot of things that come out of this, especially around this topic around just developing good people. This is something that isn't just football related. This is about being a better person. And you know how good would you feel if they turned around and said, you know what, it was in Jack Walton's session that I learnt around respect and around how I treat other people. And I think it's real key. So I just wanted to highlight them. But well done, Hoddy, on that, and Ben on the stuff that he's been doing as well. I've got some more in. I'll share this with you because I'm conscious of time, and I know Jack's going to jump right out of one and into another with the Zoom quiz.
No,
I don't know. I don't know, Jack, if there's any last thoughts that you've got around this sort of stuff. If there's anything that you direct people to, where can people find you if they've got more questions?
I think directed. Were you gonna? You know that website? Was it Sussex FA that pulled a really good selection of all that? So all the FA content on. It's probably the most. The topic with the most content on the FA website, I would say, and I just had a small part in it. But come at stuff with a critical eye and go and do your own research and read around this stuff, because there's masses and masses and masses of research being done on this stuff. Get into the weeds in it, and it will make you think about what you do, question your own practice, park your ego, like we've talked about already, and it is about relationships at the end of the day and the connection that you have with the players. So I think if you do a ton of prevention, you'll probably only have an ounce of cure when it comes to misbehavior. But this stuff does not happen overnight. You're not going to just turn up to your next session and things are going to go swimmingly. We're going to all get things wrong, and that's okay. You know, we're all still learning this. So yeah, I would say, you know, now's the time to really invest in yourself and think about the way that you coach and question some deep assumptions of why you've done what you've done and why your club does what it does. The trophies one, you know, we could be here till 9 o'clock in the morning, but just be really, really careful. If you're locked into rewards, be really careful how you use them. There was a sadder story which I'll finish on. One of our tutors actually in the Southwest, he took his boy to a local charter standard club, and after 6 weeks, the boy got back in the car, burst into tears, and said, "I don't want to go to football anymore." And Dad said, "You know, why is that?" And he's a really, really good guy, understands football. He said the actual coaching was fantastic. He said, they got the trophy out and whipped the kids into a frenzy and then gave it to one of them at the end of the day, thinking that they were doing a really good thing by shaping behaviour. And all this boys saw, all the rest of the boys saw was they came away thinking, "Oh, I didn't get that. I didn't do whatever I had to do to achieve this reward." And it was sad. And I think he was lost to the game, that boy, and went to play rugby instead. So it can really backfire. But yeah. Sorry to finish on that one, James. I should pick us up with a little bit of a better story, shouldn't I? Really?
Wow, that's a great one to finish on.
I will give you something to laugh at. I've talked about this all night, but I am actually locked into an extrinsic reward based on exercise. So if any of you have got an Apple Watch or one of the other devices, you'll know what I'm talking about here. On what day is it today? Is it Thursday?
Yeah.
On Tuesday night, I nearly killed myself. I did about a 45-minute kettlebell session because it was the last day of an exercise competition with a colleague. And I looked at the score and it was still level. So I got the skipping rope out and did nearly half an hour of skipping to some like really heavy techno music. And it was chucking it down with rain outside. And that is what sometimes these extrinsics do to you. I haven't done a thing since in 2 days.
It wasn't Dave you were locked into competition with, was it?
No, there's no chance to Miles. He's cycling at the moment. I wouldn't get near it.
Great stuff. Jack, can I just, on behalf of the county and the guys in here, thank you for your time tonight. I
really enjoyed it.
No, it's been great, and like the others on here, it's great just to grab a sort of couple of hours. I thought maybe an hour and a half, but like you said at the start, we could definitely probably chat all night around it, and it's aimed in more on 2 hours. But I hope people on here found it useful. Certainly something that I know it's of value. I know it impacts on everybody. So again, Jack, just thanks for being so open and honest around it.
Sorry, there was one more thing that I was going to say. Actually, Jim, nearly fell off my stool there. I would say I found a really, really good quote today when I was reviewing some of the stuff for this, and it says, "Learning is at its best when sharing information and ideas, challenging assumptions, and rethinking your own. Working on problems in a climate of social support. Note that all these things usually require talking." So I would urge everyone on there tonight, if you do talk to other people, talk to coaches, talk to your kids, talk to people who maybe watch you coach but don't know anything about football. Just talk, and you'll be amazed at where it takes you.
Grand. That's definitely a positive to finish on. So no, guys, thank you very much. As with all, so next week's guest we've got lined up, we've got pretty much a stacked schedule now to the end of June, and this is going to go on, like I said, as long as we are. We're going to probably hopefully readjust things potentially, depending on lockdown and things like that. But I'm certainly keen, and I hope you guys are on the call as well, to keep this a weekly thing and running it on a weekly basis. So same time every Thursday. Just happened the NHS through a clapping, the guys through a clapping for the NHS on a Thursday evening, but we'll stick with it. I think it's fine. Next week, Graham, I don't know if you're Nick, either one of you want to sort of introduce next week. I've got, I don't know how you want to do it, guys. I've got a video to show folk and some questions to consider for next week. So those that are joining us, they've put a little bit into what to consider. Graham, Nick, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, James. Just for next week, we just, I guess we just wanted to sort of raise awareness of the Coach Mentor programme, and and have a little look at sort of mentoring around the technical corner, I suppose. Talk about some of the work we do again is to echo some of Jack's sharing some experience and hopefully put on as engaging a session as what Jack has. But yeah, pretty hard to follow some of the experience it's been over the last few weeks. But yeah, hopefully we'll put on a bit of a session raising awareness of mentoring and what it looks like.
And just on it, Nick, the questions that are on the screen now for people to see, is it just some things that they've got to consider?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody gets a chance, could they have a look into some really closed questions, but we'd like to open them up next week. Our Liverpool long ball team is David De Gea, one of the top 5 keepers in the Premier League. And when was the last time you delivered a session or a block of work around turning? I know Ben Snowden's done a bit because I've seen that on his bingo, but yeah, I'm just wondering, with Graham and myself, when we're putting it together, we're wondering, again, touching on the technical corner, how much of the technical corner actually gets looked at. So, yeah.
Good stuff. Guys, what I would say is that the guys that work in, they do some great stuff in the mentoring team, specifically around supporting people. So when this all comes out as well, I'm hoping that this session will engage you and put some faces to names, and hopefully spread the message. So they will be looking certainly at the content that's been delivered, and we'll be looking to get that off the ground. Nick, and the video, do you need the video tonight, or can it? I'm just conscious of time, that's all.
Yeah, no, but by all means, just share it if people have a look at it. Yeah,
I'll share it with everybody tomorrow, mate, so they can have a look at it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for tonight, Jack. Enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Again, so like I've said, I've finished with everyone. We've got a website page on our website now. This has been recorded, so this will be on our website for people to tune in and have a rewatch, those that couldn't make it. What I will keep urging you to do is share. So we've talked there, Jack's just mentioned there around talking, and I've picked up certainly from coaches I've been talking with around pretty much around our mental health, to be honest, and around how we kind of need this type of thing. We need to keep on that normal ladder as much as we can. So feel free to share with the coaches in your club, social media platforms, anything at all. Leave us comments on Twitter. It's the best way that we can get this out to the wider public, guys. So again, thanks very much for tuning in. Again, just to finish off, I'll leave you with this every week, but it really is, and as a county we do feel that the sort of, I know sometimes we come across as well, they've done this and they've done that, but we really do care, and I want you to know that if there's anything that we can do to help, support, even challenge, change the way that we delivered this, do something different, we're not precious. I think we've had every guest on so far, and I've said the same thing is, and Jack will tell you from himself, we aren't precious about things. We'll share where we can, and we'll do what we can to help. So thank you for tuning in, guys. Lastly, thanks to Jack for giving up his time. He's definitely in now. Are you back into the Zoom after your tea?
And I've not done the picture round yet. Do the picture round.
So thanks very much, guys. Appreciate your time this evening, and look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jack.
Hey, James, I'll catch you tomorrow.
Yeah, no worries, pal. No bother.